So Hare Krishna everyone, welcome. Today we have a beautiful verse here in the Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam, every verse of which can completely heal us. We need to be healed, right? We may think we're well, we may think we have good health, but actually we're still sick. That's why we're here. That's where our consciousness is absorbed in duality, and that's why we're not able to really properly think of Krishna, that we still are diseased. So each verse, each syllable of Srimad Bhagavatam is so powerful that it can heal us, that we need healing. The material energy is so powerful, it makes us think we're okay, we're good, everything is fine, no problem. But actually we have a very big problem. We're in a very large problem. So the Bhagavatam will help us examine this problem, especially here, this section of Srimad Bhagavatam. So we'll just ask the blessings of all the devotees, all the wonderful devotees here, senior devotees, that they give us their permission and blessings to speak on this verse of Srimad Bhagavatam. The translation repeated, O trustworthy Brahmins, I now ask you about my immediate duty. Please, after proper deliberation, tell me of the unalloyed duty of everyone in all circumstances, and specifically of those who are just about to die. So Maharaj Parikshit has met the sages, and here he's addressing them as very trustworthy. So we could say this is a very nice key word here, Vishrabhya. So because they are trustworthy, he knows he can trust them, he can trust their answers, because he's getting ready to ask a very important question. What is the duty of everyone, and especially those who are about to die? So Prabhupada says this is our question because we don't know how long we have. Everyone is old in that sense. So we're all on the verge of death. And he wants to know very conclusively, so that there will be no controversy. In this assembly there's many different sages, there's many different processes like yoga, jnana, even karma that could be considered. But he wants to know actually what is this krityam shuddham? What is this perfect duty? So Jiva Goswami gives a little comment on this. He translates it, please tell me in common agreement what is the highest activity, though there are many duties to be performed and many duties for those who are dying. Can you go to the Sanskrit here? So it says, Kriyatayam, up a little more. Kriyatayam sarvatmana mriyamanaischa. Just to where it's the direct Sanskrit. If you keep going up. Yeah, the shloka, yeah. Kriyatayam, of all these different, duties, kritya, duties, sarvatmana mriyamanascha. So by everyone, sarva atma and mriyamanai, especially by those who are about to die. So of these duties, then cha krityam shuddham, which are the pure duties, which are the transcendental duties? So Jiva Goswami says, I have faith that you will teach only about service to Krishna's feet. I ask, what is the highest activity, shuddham, I should do? It should be free of kanishta and madhyama sadhana. It should be the highest sadhana. It should take the form of service to Krishna's lotus feet. So he wants to know about pure devotional service. Not, as we're saying, anything mixed, not anything of a lower level, like it was mentioned, that there's different, Prabhupada says, second or third class methods. He wants to know about the first class method. And Prabhupada always takes the opportunity to remind us in Bhagavad Gita, the conclusion, and Prabhupada is bringing it up here again. The conclusion arrived at thereof is that devotional service of the Lord Sri Krishna, as it is confirmed by the Lord himself in the last phases of Bhagavad Gita, is the last word in relation to everyone's permanent duty in life. So that's pretty amazing. Everyone's permanent duty in life is to fully surrender to Krishna. I mean, that's pretty remarkable. So we have different levels of duty, we have different levels of activity, but everyone, every soul, their permanent duty is actually full surrender to Krishna. So we can think in our life, where are we stuck? What are the obstacles that can be in the way? We can think of the positives, what we should do, and we can also think what we should not do. So Rupa Goswami, he, in the Nectar of Instruction, he tells both things. He tells what we should do and also what we should not do. So first he actually tells what we should not do. In the second verse of NOI, do you want to pull it up, Lance? Nectar of Instruction, text 2. Atyahara prayasascha prajalpo niyamagraha janasangascha loyam cha sadvibhaktir vinashyati. One's devotional service is spoiled. That's pretty powerful. I don't want to spoil my devotional service. So wow, each of these activities will spoil our devotional service, according to Rupa Goswami. See, they chart us there on such a high level of devotion. The things that we do all the time for them, that's like, no, that's spoiled. Like if you have food, you have some prasad, if it gets spoiled, no, you can't take it. So these things that we may be doing for them, that's a spoiler. 1, eating more than necessary or collecting more funds than required. 2, over-endeavoring for mundane things that are very difficult to obtain. 3, talking unnecessarily about mundane subject matters. 4, practicing the scriptural rules and regulations only for the sake of following them and not for the sake of spiritual advancement, or rejecting the rules and regulations of the scriptures and working independently or whimsically. 5, associating with worldly-minded persons who are not interested in Krishna consciousness. And 6, being greedy for mundane achievements. So he says these 6 things, they'll spoil one's devotional service. And I found interestingly in the purport, maybe you can scroll down to the 5th paragraph. It says, in the material world. You keep going down. Yeah. In the material world, one has to work for the maintenance of the body and soul. But how can one perform work in such a way that is favorable for the execution of Krishna consciousness? Everyone requires possessions such as food, grains, clothing, money, and other things necessary for the maintenance of the body. But one should not collect more than necessary for his actual basic needs. So I found this quite powerful because, as we said in the beginning, we're kind of sick. And if we don't think we're sick, then it's said we may be an illusion. So because we're not spiritually healthy, we need to remind ourselves of the things to do and things to avoid. The material energy is so strong that she constantly makes us think material prosperity is success. Material gain, whether it can be gross or subtle, that this is what it's all about. So even as practicing devotees, I think this influences our consciousness. We start evaluating things on an external point of view. Unfortunately, our acharyas are saying that this can ruin our devotion. The next paragraph. According to nature's arrangement, living entities lower on the evolutionary scale do not eat or collect more than necessary. Consequently, in the animal kingdom, there is generally no economic problem or scarcity of necessities. If a bag of rice is placed in a public place, birds will come and eat a few grains and go away. A human being, however, will take away the whole bag. He will eat all his stomach can hold and then try to keep the rest in storage. According to scriptures, this collecting of more than necessary atyahara is prohibited. So this is amazing because our consciousness, it's dependent on our actions. You know, how we act, it affects our mind. So the kind of habits and practices that we do, it shapes our consciousness and therefore our ability to remember Krishna. So it's said here there's actually a standard. As we know from Isha Upanishad, there's a quota. So for the human beings, collecting more than necessary is actually prohibited. It's actually not allowed. It's adharmic. And we can see in the world scale what kind of problem this is creating. So many huge billionaires accumulating more than they need. And therefore many people are without their needs because of this atyahara. And also as devotees, sometimes we can fall into this trap. We can become very comfortable. We can say, yes, I'm using yukta vairagya, but we may be taking more than we need. And this can affect our devotion. In other words, Krishna's energy is so valuable, it's so sacred, and it's actually worshipable. So when we try to take more for ourselves than what we actually need, it's a contamination of consciousness. Whereas those who live only by what they really need, it strengthens their devotion. They're able to perceive and remember Krishna better. Especially money or Lakshmi in the Kali Yuga, where it comes from, it's always kind of unclean. We try to purify it by engaging it, but in general, because sin is so prominent in today's culture, this Lakshmi is very heavy. We may remember the story of Jagannath Das Babaji. He was being carried in a basket. Someone gave a donation of 1 coin. He said, stop. This is too heavy. He said, what do you mean heavy? We didn't add anything. Oh yeah, I've added 1 little coin. He said, that's too heavy. And 1 coin. So imagine how much more, imagine how much karma this money holds. And so therefore it can affect our consciousness actually. Whereas when devotees live very simply, only what they need, this is how Prabhupada taught. Prabhupada said every farthing, if you misspend 1 farthing, you will fall down. So that's the standard. And that's the devotional standard. That's the Gaudiya Vaishnava standard. In Mahaprabhu's line, Vidya, Vairagya, knowledge and renunciation. So this becomes an aspect of their devotion. Because they want to depend fully on Krishna, they don't want to accumulate more than they need. If they do that, their devotion will be diminished. So I recently had experience, visiting a wonderful temple in Kansas City. It's called Rupanuga Vedic College. I first actually kind of started traveling there, but they had a TSKP program. And the temple is very austere. It's very austere. My friend here, Prabhu Maturnath, lived there for many years. I think for many years there was no warm water for washing dishes. The building is kind of falling apart. Even Maharaj, Danavir Maharaj's room, you look up there, it's not even finished. The walls are not even finished. The ashram rooms are very simple. But by going there and staying there, you feel very much like special mercy. Because they're trying to save every penny. They're trying to implement that principle. Not that we have to live in some broken down place. They're making renovations, but they're very frugal in how they spend Krishna's money. They understand this is Krishna's energy. It has to be very carefully utilized. We cannot spare anything unnecessarily. And then actually we feel we can remember Krishna more. Feel that, yeah, this is a mercy actually. Whereas our material mind is thinking, if I get more, then I'll be better. It'll be easier to remember Krishna. But often it's the opposite. When we get so much more things, we get more entangled, we find it harder to remember Krishna. Jai Shri Shri Radha Nila Madhav Ki Jai. So we have Krishna's blessing can come to us, Krishna's facility can come to us, but then it's up to the devotee how we will utilize it. How we will, sometimes money can actually be a problem. It's like, wow, now I have a big responsibility. I have to figure out how to use this very carefully in Krishna's service so that it will not burden my consciousness or burden my devotion. So less is more. We're trying to get detached from this material world. For millions of years, we've been so ingrained. In this lifetime, we're trying to make a commitment to our Guru, to Prabhupada, to Krishna, to surrender, to give up this quest to try to exploit the material energy. So we're saying, this life, I want to surrender. I want to come to this level that Prabhupada is saying, of surrender to Krishna as the ultimate phase of Bhagavad Gita, the ultimate duty for every living being in all circumstances. So there is duties for everyone, and then there's duty for those who are about to die. And as we mentioned, we are very close to that. When we look on the larger, when we zoom out, we just have a few moments. We see how fast time is going. It's like we have a few weeks, basically. We have like a few months. The time goes so quick. So this is the opportunity now to try to overcome these material tendencies, these obstacles, atihara, over-collecting, over-endeavoring, talking unnecessarily. It's all unnecessary because to really focus on Krishna, it takes a lot of absorption. It takes a lot of mental space. If our mind is clouded with so many other things, there's no room for Krishna. So therefore things like bad association, greed, these things, they just sap our intellectual conscious quota. Like we have a quota of how much we can process. So we can either spend it thinking about Krishna, about hearing and chanting, trying to go deep in our spiritual life, in our internal life, or it will be spent in so many other things. So we want to make that switch, reduce all of that unnecessary absorption, but then positively, we have to really make a positive effort. How can I spend more time in my internal life? How can I go deeper in my reading, in my association, in my chanting? So this is again the opportunity that we have. And since this purport of Jiva Goswami, he's saying, what is the highest activity I should do? It should be free of kanishta and madhyama sadhana. It should be the highest sadhana. It should take the form of service to Krishna's lotus feet. So our acharyas from their realized position, service to Krishna's feet means actually service to Krishna's feet. It has different meanings. We can say serving the lotus feet of the Lord. It can mean remembering the Lord, serving the devotees, going to the holy dham. But also, on their level, the acharyas actually serve Krishna's lotus feet. So how is that possible? How does that come about? And here he's saying it should be the highest sadhana. So Rupa Goswami further in this book, he talks about the higher sadhana. Can we go to text 8? So let's chant this together. Tanama rupa chatitadi sukirtanano smrityo kramena rasana manasi niyojya tishtan vrajeta danuragi jananugami Kalam nayed akilamit upadesha sharam. So the upadesha sharam, the essence of all advice. That's pretty amazing. When we go out and meet people, sometimes they have like ask a monk. People might ask a monk for advice, so we can just tell them this verse. This is the essence of all advice. Many people are into giving advice. It's a whole business. You have like coaches, life coaches, consultants. Everyone wants to give some advice. So take all of that advice. Actually, that's mostly material advice. But even any advice, and here we have spiritual advice. What's the essence of all of it? When you meet devotees, they're going to give you some advice. They're going to say, hey, you should do this, you should do that. What is the essence of all advice? The essence of all advice is that one should utilize one's full time, 24 hours a day, in nicely chanting and remembering the Lord's divine name, transcendental form, qualities, and eternal pastimes. So he says, chanting and remembering. This is how the essence of we should use all of our time. Isn't that amazing? It doesn't say you should be doing this, you should be running here, you should be doing that. He's saying you should be chanting and remembering. If you're chanting and remembering, that's what you should be doing. So, there's different levels of engagement in service. But chanting and remembering the Lord's name, form, qualities, eternal pastimes, thereby gradually engaging one's tongue and mind. In this way one should reside in Braj, Goloka Vrindavan Dham, and serve Krishna under the guidance of devotees. So how does one reside in Braj? By doing this, by remembering the Lord, by chanting. In this way one should reside in Braj and serve Krishna under the guidance of advanced devotees. One should follow in the footsteps of the Lord's beloved devotees who are deeply attached to his devotional service. So there you have it. Now we have the essence of all advice. And now we have to try to do it. We have to try to apply it. We're not yet at this level of 24 hours a day, but some hours a day at least. Maybe 1 hour a day. That might be a big step. To be 1 hour a day, engaged, nicely chanting and remembering the Lord's name, form, qualities, and that would be pretty good. So we can start with 1 hour, then we could go up to 2 hours. So that's Krishna consciousness. That's what the great devotees, their great minds are absorbed always in remembering the Lord. Let's look a little bit at the purport. Since the mind may be one's enemy or one's friend, one has to train the mind to become his friend. The Krishna conscious movement is especially meant for training the mind to be always engaged in Krishna's business. The mind contains hundreds and thousands of impressions, not only of this life, but also of many, many lives of the past. Wow. Just this life, imagine how many impressions are in our mind. I know my mind. I know when I start chanting, what kind of impressions start coming. Thousands. Hundreds and thousands of impressions. I can't even count hundreds and thousands, but there's that many impressions. These impressions sometimes come in contact with one another and produce contradictory pictures. In this way, the mind's function can become dangerous for a conditioned soul. So we think of danger. Watch out. There's a cliff. The danger is the mind's function. If we don't properly engage the mind, even after practicing for a long time, the mind can become dangerous. Students of psychology are aware of the mind's various psychological changes. In the Bhagavad Gita it said, Yam yam vapi smaram bhavam, tejante ante kalevaram, tam tam evaiti konteya, sadatat bhava bhavita. Whatever state of being one remembers when he quits his body, that state he will attain without fail. At the time of death, the mind and intelligence of a living entity create the subtle form of a certain type of body for the next life. So what we're developing now, what we're manifesting through our mind and intelligence is going to determine our next life. If the mind suddenly thinks of something not very congenial, one has to take a corresponding birth in the next life. On the other hand, if one can think of Krishna at the time of death, he can be transferred to the spiritual world, Goloka Vrindavan.